What's up, guys? This is Holland with the Wolverine.com, and we are back with another Tuesday live recruiting show. It is the Q&A show, so make sure to get your questions in the chat box. I'll be answering everybody's questions tonight. As always, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get notifications every time we drop new videos. For anything breaking news, you're going to want to subscribe. It's completely free. And liking this video helps us get in front of other Michigan fans. It's also a busy time at the Wolverine.com. Make sure to subscribe today. Use the promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at the Wolverine.com. Get exclusive information on everything recruiting, especially coming out of these big spring weekends, along with transfer portal. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. You have basketball transfer portal happening right now as well. So it's a perfect time to subscribe, not to mention it's spring football season. So take advantage, use that code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at the Wolverine.com. As always, we will be answering the questions in the order in which they are asked. So we have guys that have been here since 2 o'clock. But if you want to skip the line, or if you want to ask more than 5 questions tonight, we've limited the number of questions per user after, last week's situation. So if you want to skip the line, ask more than 5 questions, you can leave a super chat. Or if you just want to support the show and help contribute to my travel budget so I can continue to see top recruits around the country, you can hit that little box with the dollar symbol. That's a super chat. Again, you can skip the line. You can ask more questions. You can donate to my travel budget by hitting that super chat, and we would appreciate that. But let's go ahead and get started with Ryan K. And he says, what's your feeling on Javian Osborne? Does he go Michigan or Notre Dame in the end? Right now, I'm leaning towards Notre Dame. I know I put in a pick for Michigan, and at the time it made a lot of sense. Notre Dame wasn't even in the picture. Texas had dropped out. Michigan was the clear leader. They looked like they were on the verge of potentially ending up with a commitment from him. But, Osborne, despite canceling that Texas visit, he didn't immediately commit to Michigan, which he has publicly named his leader since, the winter. I want to say maybe late November. Michigan has been at the very top of his list. And again, Notre Dame wasn't really a major factor at all. It was, considered a Michigan-Texas battle. Once Texas went out of the race, it was clear Michigan was at the top. But he didn't immediately commit to the Wolverines. So he left the door open for other schools to get involved. And Notre Dame definitely did. They made a big push for Osborne this past month. They got him on campus for a visit. They really hit a home run on that trip. Notre Dame has a new running backs coach who is an upgrade and on the recruiting trail and is historically one of the better recruiters, especially, in the Big Ten. Michigan fans will be familiar with him from his time at Penn State, where he stacked up running backs. So, I think, and the visit to Notre Dame went extremely well. The fact that Notre Dame is making him the guy for their class, I think, is playing a big factor here. For as much as Osborne loves Michigan and I think would be a good fit at Michigan, you kind of have that Savion Hyder cloud hanging over you. Savion Hyder is the guy. He's the guy that gets all the headlines. He's the guy that gets the buzz. He's the guy that's been considered the number 1 running back on the board. So, obviously I've written a lot about Sonic and Knuckles and that combination potentially happening. But I think when it gets time to business and one school's making you the priority and the other school has the number 1 running back in the country very heavily interested, it makes for a tough decision. I think it's a tough situation for Michigan to handle, especially since they are still, right at the top for Hyder. They would love to have Osborne in the class. Don't get me wrong. He's an extremely talented back. But again, I don't want to speak out of pocket here as this situation is a delicate one. But I would just say, one school has gone all in on him being the priority, and the other has the number one running back in the country. Very, very interested. And, you've seen, some of the social media interactions there as well. When discussing Osborne and Hyder, it seems to have turned into a little bit of a rivalry as opposed to a potential duo. So, right now I'm leaning Notre Dame, but I think that's okay for Michigan as long as they close with Savion Hyder. If you let Notre Dame come in here at the last minute and steal Javian Osborne away from you, and you don't close with Savion Hyder, then you have an issue. So, if Osborne does end up at Notre Dame, it is absolutely imperative for Tony Alford to close with Savion Hyder. Ryan K says, in your opinion, who are the 3 absolute must-get, cannot lose recruits that would be devastating to lose this cycle? Devastating is a really strong word, but I would definitely say, just to bounce off that first question, I would definitely say Savion Hyder. Again, if Javian Osborne goes to Notre Dame, the pressure is all on Michigan for Savion Hyder. They've been his leader for the last several months. They've gotten him on campus many times. Tony Alford's been recruiting him since he was like a freshman. He would be the lone, kind of elite back really left on the board. I mean, I guess you still have Brian Bonner in the mix as well, but obviously doesn't move the needle as much as Savion Hyder. And no running back does. And that takes us back to the original question. Savion Hyder is the guy. He's the number 1 running back in the entire country. He's the alpha dog. So, missing out on Hyder, especially if you miss out on Osborne, I would say that probably qualifies as devastating. In terms of others that it would suck to lose, I don't think there would be any other devastating ones where, I would be like, man, that really is a setback. But I think one that would kind of suck to lose would be Travis Johnson, on 300 wide receiver, also out of Virginia. Michigan has built some really good momentum with Johnson, especially coming out of his weekend visit. Michigan's exploring potential NIL with some, top 50 national wide receivers, including Calvin Russell. But I think Travis Johnson is the guy who's still, in that top 100 range, who is realistic, who you probably need to put together a strong NIL package for, but you don't have to, it's not going to be a bidding war necessarily. So I think if you miss out on Travis Johnson, that kind of sucks because he's been the guy at the top of that board for a while. I mean, you have other options like Gordon Sellers, even though he appears to be trending elsewhere. Nolan Scott is set to come in this weekend, but of the non-bidding war type of guys, Travis Johnson is the best of the group. So missing out on him would certainly be difficult. And then another guy I would say that would be really tough to lose would be Matt Ludwig, just because Michigan's trending for him, on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. Right now, we're all expecting Michigan to land Ludwig, the on 300 tight end out of Montana, especially after losing Andrew Olesh last cycle. It's imperative for the Wolverines to close with that top end tight end. And Ludwig is the guy for them. So after having the lead for the last couple of months and really starting to trend in the last month, it would definitely hurt a lot for Michigan to lose him. Butter XO says, who are the prospects Michigan treats as 5 stars despite not being ranked as high on the recruiting rankings like they did with Shamari Earls and Jadon Blair last cycle? I think the guy that pops out is Matt Ludwig. His rankings are kind of all over the place, I guess. On3 recently did bump him up to number 105 in the country, but I know Michigan really values him as a true blue chip prospect. They were extremely impressed with his measurables when he came to campus last summer. They loved what they saw from him this fall. They went out and watched him play basketball. I mean, the dude is a bigger tight end who's a terrific pass catcher, but he can also run. He recently ran an 11.3 100 meter, which is actually faster than some of the slot receivers that Michigan has landed recently. So I think Matt Luedecke is a guy that they've really been impressed with on film, testing numbers. He's certainly been the guy they value more than the ranking services do. Another guy that comes to mind that is rated as a 3-star basically across the board, except for On3, which has him in the On 300, is Marky Walbridge, offensive lineman out of New England. He's very high on a really deep offensive line board. I don't think a lot of fans talk about him a ton, but Michigan definitely values Marky Walbridge a lot. I wouldn't say, a 5-star. Maybe they do with Luedecke, but I definitely wanted to mention Walbridge because he's a guy that I know is viewed a lot higher by Michigan. Butter XO says, are we still the leader for Trey Taylor? So top 100 Chicagoland quarterback Trey Taylor in the 2027 recruiting class. Michigan has had the lead on the On3 recruiting prediction machine for quite some time. I've never put in a pick for Michigan here, though. He's been to campus a lot. He's been to Michigan more than any other school. He was recently on campus this spring, but I think right now with Taylor having a decision timeline for the summer, it's more likely he ends up elsewhere. Could that change? Certainly. I don't think Michigan is taking an all-in approach for Trey Taylor. Obviously, you have Ryder Lyons on the board for this class, who is technically a 2027 because of his mission. On top of that, Chip Lindsey is casting a wide net. He is not doing the all your eggs in one basket approach that we've kind of grown accustomed to with Michigan quarterback recruiting. I mean, you look at the guys he's brought on campus. Keegan Bryant, the number 1 quarterback in the country in 2027 per On3, is on campus literally today. That's why he's the thumbnail. Elijah Haven, the number 1 quarterback in 2027 per the industry, was just on campus this weekend. Michigan just offered 2 top 100 guys on campus this weekend in Malachi Ziegler and Trent Seaborn. Last weekend, they had 2 top 100 guys in Keegan Croucher and Peter Bork. So there are a lot of options out there when it comes to 2027 quarterbacks. I like Trey, but I don't think he's a guy you necessarily need to, move heaven and earth and go all in for and make him the number 1 guy, especially with the amount of talented quarterbacks that are showing a lot of interest. I mean, I really like Keegan Croucher and Peter Bork. I think Keegan Bryant has the highest ceiling out of any quarterback in the country next cycle. So, I think Chip Lindsey's being smart. I like his approach. Customer service, the star of last week's show. He says, how do you feel about the visit with Donald Tabron? So Donald Tabron, 2028 quarterback out of Cass Tech in Detroit. He absolutely loves Michigan early on. He's just a really young prospect. It's tough to start talking about 28s right now, but he's extremely talented. I had a chance to see him out at Battle New Orleans a couple of weeks ago, and he looks the part of that next 5-star coming out of Detroit. He is listed at 6'3", 175, kind of a lanky frame, but definitely a legit 6'3", if not maybe an inch or 2 taller. Like he's a big kid. I mean, he's a tall kid, and I think he'll eventually become a big kid once he adds some weight to that lanky frame. I think the possibilities for Tabron are endless. I mean, he has elite arm talent early on, the ability to process. I was really impressed with him in general, just in 7-on-7. And I think, he's a guy that just has that magnetic personality that will recruit others around him. And he, it takes a certain type of guy to play the quarterback position. And he led Cass Tech to a state title as a freshman. So, I mean, and Underwood did the same thing at Belleville. So I think Donald Tabron has a chance to be really special. He's quickly growing into one of my favorite underclassmen recruits. I mean, he also views Bryce Underwood as a big brother, had a chance to spend some time with him on the visit. Tabron even wears number 19, just like Underwood. So, yeah, I thought he really liked the visit. He was impressed with the new offense. He told me he's looking forward to seeing what it actually looks like in game. Um, he's excited about Bryce Underwood. That relationship is really strong. They train with the same quarterback trainer, Donovan Dooley, as well. But yeah, a lot of great early returns on Tabron as a player, as well as his interest in Michigan. Ben Ricketts says, which analyst slash assistant position coach do you hear the most about from recruits? That's a good question. I would say the guys that have been popping up the most here recently have been one has been Josh Synagoga. And I've talked a lot about Michigan casting a wide net with 2027 quarterbacks. You know, Chip Lindsey obviously is the offensive coordinator. He's heavily involved with recruiting the quarterbacks. He's the guy making the offers and things of that nature. But Synagoga has done a great job, you know, of being a guy that's building those relationships early on with these young signal callers. I mean, you talk about Donald Tabron. When I asked him about Michigan, he was quick to talk about, hey, I got to campus. The first guy I met with was Josh Synagoga. When I talked to Malachi Ziegler, I mean, he told me the same thing. Hey, Josh Synagoga doing a great job in my recruitment. When I talked to Keegan Croucher and Peter Bork, both of those guys mentioned Synagoga as well. So I think he's been doing a really good job in assisting Chip Lindsey with the recruitment of a lot of these highly touted quarterbacks. The other guy that's getting attention from recruits that isn't necessarily involved in their process too much, like he's not making the calls, he's not building relationships, but they've been really impressed with his coaching and his presentation. And that's Juan Castillo, who obviously has a lot of experience, who came in with a strong NFL background. Obviously, he was at the college level coming over from UCLA, but he brings a lot of years as an offensive line coach in the NFL. He did that with the Philadelphia Eagles for a long, long time. Just a great teacher of the game. And recruits have been, much like with Wink Martindale, they've just been really impressed with his resume, with his knowledge, with his NFL experience. So again, he's not the day-to-day guy reaching out to kids like Synagoga may be doing, but Juan Castillo has been really valuable. I also think he'll be really valuable just helping out Grant Newsome and you know, maybe doing a little bit more with less along the offensive line. I actually have been coached by Juan Castillo. I attended one of his offensive line, defensive line camps back when I was a high school junior. And yeah, he's awesome, man. I love Juan. We're from the same hometown. So I think he's a guy that was a really good, sneaky good hire this offseason that'll bring a lot of value to Michigan. Ben Ricketts says, where does Michigan stand with Jet Washington? Yeah, so Jet Washington, top 100 defensive back out of Las Vegas, Bishop Gorman. Hasn't made it to campus this spring. He remains a top priority for Michigan, definitely at the top of the board. He told me he's looking at coming in for an official visit. He did name Michigan in his top schools. So things are a little quiet with Jet Washington right now, just because he hasn't had a chance to make it to spring. But I think, you know, he's been to campus before. If they get him in for an OV, that's really going to tell us a lot more. Let's go down to Ben Ricketts again. He says, based on this last few weekends of visitors, who has Michigan improved their chances of landing the most? I think they really helped themselves with Travis Johnson over the weekend. Obviously, we talked about him early in the show. I mean, he is a massive priority at the wide receiver position. I talked to his mom for like half an hour last night. I'll be putting up that interview over at the Wolverine.com. So again, make sure to head over and subscribe there. But, you know, kind of the gist of it is just they really wowed Johnson and his mother. They were extremely impressed with the plans for the new offense. They loved what they saw from Bryce Underwood. They had a fantastic meeting with Sherrone more. I think Michigan's checking a lot of boxes for Travis. So I think they really helped themselves in that race for sure. I definitely think they helped themselves for Carter Meadows, 5-star edge out of Gonzaga. I think that visit went really well. Carter is extremely quiet, doesn't give too much away. I had some quotes from him over at the Wolverine following his visit, but I think behind the scenes, Michigan made a nice move there. He's a culture fit at Michigan, high academic student, as a teammate or as a former teammate of Kainoa Winston, who just signed with Michigan from the same program that produced Evan Link. Gonzaga. When you think about Gonzaga, you think about kids that fit the Michigan profile. I think he had a chance to experience that on campus. I think a kid they helped themselves with for sure was Jay Cruel as well. Top 100 edge out of IMG Academy. Michigan appeared to be pretty much out of that race this winter. I went to Under Armour. I went to the Under Armour All-American event in January, and I mean, Michigan was basically dead in this race. They got him on campus for a visit in March, and things went really well. And, the Wolverines are firmly in the mix for a potential official visit. Not saying they have the momentum now or they have the buzz in terms of leader or anything like that, but I think they've solidified themselves back in this race. And I think Jake kind of saw the vision for what Michigan does with edge production, with edge development. He actually made it to campus with his agent, Cliff Hill. I think those conversations went really well. Hill actually represented Nathaniel Wusu-Boateng last cycle, so there's familiarity between his agent and Michigan. And then on top of that, Michigan obviously landed a handful of his teammates last cycle, Caden Strayhorn, Donovan Johnson. Those guys are definitely involved in recruiting him, and Boateng as well, obviously. So, yeah, I mean, those are some that definitely come to mind that Michigan has helped itself out with. Ryan K says, Ohio State just pulled a 5-star out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Predict who Michigan's equivalent shock the world commit will be this cycle. I don't know if I necessarily have a true shock the world guy. Like, they could land one of those big receivers if they decide to go all in on NIL. The guy that I think will be but could be the next Ty Haywood is John Turntine, top 100 offensive lineman out of Texas, who just visited over the weekend. Turntine, from a national perspective, Michigan hasn't really had much buzz in that recruitment, but they got him on campus this weekend. He's a personal favorite of Sherrone Moore. Like with Ty Haywood, Moore made him a top priority early on. He's personally involved in this recruitment. Haywood, obviously, from the DFW area as well. And with Haywood, you had Alabama as the heavy leader. Alabama eventually landed his commitment, and obviously he ended up signing with Michigan. With Turntine, you have Texas as the heavy leader, the in-state school, the dream school like Alabama was for Haywood. But I think Michigan offers a lot to offensive linemen, both from a development standpoint, but also an NIL standpoint. I mean, Michigan is willing to pay offensive linemen. So when you look at who could Michigan pay in a similar manner to Ty Haywood, it's John Turntine. A lot of similarities there, like I talked about, both DFW guys, both projected to go to a school they were fond of early on. But Michigan, I think, has proven that it can go into the South and land an elite offensive line talent. They did it last cycle with Haywood. I think they can do it with Turntine. Tyson Smith says, thank God customer service got shut down. When are we getting the next commit? I don't think we should be mean to customer service. He was very polite early on. He said he would wait until the end of the show to ask his question. So we can't hate on customer service. He's a fellow fan. But in terms of when Michigan's getting its next commit, Michigan always gets off to these like slow starts. They're not a school that stacks up on early commits. And sometimes that can be a detriment. Like you see Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame, the last couple of years, they've started off super high and then they just fall. Like, I don't even think they finished in the top 10 last cycle. They always lose guys. Guys are decommitting. They have that archaic no visit policy that's so stupid. And then kids end up breaking it at the end and then they tumble in the rankings. Like, that's what happens to them all the time. USC, they have the number one class in the Big Ten right now. They're another school that stacks up on early commits and has a lot of decommits. So I think with Michigan, it's a little concerning that they didn't get any commitments in March, but definitely nothing to panic over. Michigan does its best work during summer official visits. And then deeper into the process, obviously you had a lot of flips late last cycle. You think of Bryce Underwood, Shamari Earls, Jordan Young. Those are guys that all came late. In terms of when Michigan can land its next commit, I still think they can get a guy or two to shut it down before summer official visits begin. But I wouldn't panic too much in regard to the lack of commits. All right, guys, before we have a super chat from customer service. Take that, Tyson Smith. And customer service donates $2. We appreciate that. Again, that goes directly to my travel budget so I can continue to see top recruits around the country. But customer service says, what are our chances with Keegan Croucher right now? So yeah, I mean, like I said, Chip Lindsey is giving himself a wide array of options when it comes to the 2027 cycle. Keegan Croucher is certainly a guy they really like. Like I said earlier, they had him on campus last weekend. They made a big move there. I think he really loves Michigan. The Wolverines have the early lead on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. So I would say Michigan's in really good shape here. I mean, if they make an all-in push for Keegan Croucher, I could definitely see him being the guy in 2027. All right, before we move on, we have a message from our sponsor, My Perfect Franchise. Are you a displaced corporate executive or wanting to put your career into your own hands? Or are you an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify? Well, Andy Luedecke can help. Andy is a huge college sports fan and a franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses. Using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. Call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands. Best of all, his services are 100% free to you. So what do you have to lose? I mean, you're talking about franchises, man. These can be extremely valuable. You want a Chick-fil-A, you can get it anytime. You can go in there and get a spicy deluxe sandwich anytime you want if you own a Chick-fil-A. There are a lot of great franchise options out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be food. I mean, you could own just a cut. I need a haircut, and you can rack up some money with Andy. Make sure to email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net or give Andy a call at 404-973-9901. Again, that's Andy Luedecke with myperfectfranchise.net. All right, guys, we have another super chat from customer service, and he says, did you watch On3's piece on Connor Stallions? I watched the first, 15 minutes or so. I started listening to it and then I got distracted with something else. So I didn't finish it. I mean, I didn't even get halfway through, to be honest. So, I got to the part where he was, and this was obviously very early on, where he was talking about Bryce Underwood and how he ended up at Belleville and things of that nature. Look, I like Connor, man. I've had some conversations with Connor. I've enjoyed my interactions with him. Great guy. Tyson Smith says, do you buy that can't? Oh, we have another super chat from customer service, just defeating the line. You guys can join customer service as well. Hit that box with the dollar symbol. That allows you to jump the line and get your questions in ahead of everybody else, like customer service is doing to you guys. And we are getting close to the end of the show. We're about to hit the 30-minute mark. So we're about to go rapid fire. So now's the time to get your super chats in. But customer service says, if we miss on Javian Osborne, who are the options for running back 2? Brian Bonner is definitely a guy they really like. He just visited last weekend. He put together some impressive track times. He's out of California. It's kind of tough to read his recruitment right now, especially with so much being focused on Savion Hyder and Javian Osborne. But Bonner is a guy they really like. And then Amari Latimer. I mentioned him earlier in the cycle. Then things kind of faded away. But I would keep a close eye on him. Another interesting fact with Amari Latimer, his mentor and Savion Hyder's mentor are actually really good friends. So they definitely would not mind an Amari Latimer Savion Hyder connection. Let's go ahead and move on to Tyson Smith before we start the rapid fire. And before we start the rapid fire as well, just want to remind you guys, for everybody that joined late, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get notifications every time we drop new videos. Like this video so we can get even more interaction in the chat box. And also subscribe to the Wolverine.com today. It's the best time to subscribe. You have spring football going on. You get nonstop recruiting coverage coming out of these big weekends. Basketball transfer portals going on as well. So again, make sure to use that promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at the Wolverine.com. On top of that, if you like interacting in the chat box, you'll love our message board, the Fort. It's extremely active. So make sure to it's the best message board on the entire On3 network. So make sure to head over to the Wolverine.com. Use that code. We have a huge super chat from customer service who just simply says you are the best in the game. Well, we appreciate you, customer service. Don't let Tyson Smith get you down. And man, he's a hater. You have to avoid them. Tyson Smith says, do you buy that Cantwell is looking for more than money? I mean, I think money will be the deciding factor for Cantwell. But if money is even, or if money is very close, then I think Michigan has a really good resume to sell in terms of offensive line production. Sherrone Moore's involvement still as a head coach with coaching the offensive line, Michigan's academics, Cantwell is a very high academic kid. So at the end of the day, I still think this is going to be a bidding war, but the things Michigan has to offer to elite offensive linemen, I think can push the Wolverines maybe over the hump. Tyson Smith says, who was your favorite wrestler growing up? Well, I no longer watch wrestling, but I did watch a lot of wrestling as a kid. My grandpa used to get me all these WrestleMania VHSs from, it wasn't even Blockbuster. It was like a knockoff. It was like All-Star Video. And I used to watch all of those. My favorite wrestler was, obviously I'm from Texas, so Stone Cold Steve Austin. My dad played football against Stone Cold in high school, so he would always tell me about that, and I'd always be like, yeah, the Texas Rattlesnake. So Stone Cold Steve Austin for sure. And then I like Kane. I like you want some like scary, ominous energy. I know a lot of people gravitate towards the Undertaker, which he's cool too. But Kane, I feel like, is super underrated. And then I think Kane made like a modern comeback where he no longer has like the mask, so he looks like less cool. But the old school Kane was definitely great. And my wife's favorite wrestler is Mankind. I was totally blanking there because she loves Socko. Lou says, with the verbal of Keys to LSU and their wide receiver class getting crowded and Booby Feaster having an interest in LSU, does that open the door for Keys or even Ethan of Michigan? Honest opinion. Anything's possible in the world of NIL. Tristan Keys committed to LSU and then made a visit to Ole Miss. He could still very well pop up at Michigan this weekend. It really just depends on if Michigan is willing to go all in on NIL for a wide receiver, which they haven't done. Lou says, listening to Bear offensive line 26 class interview about the culture and family atmosphere at Michigan, why are other highly rated recruits listening to that as well? If a road grader says, wouldn't you want to go to Michigan? I think what Lou is asking is, Bears talking about, the culture and the family atmosphere at Michigan, which is a big selling point. Why aren't elite recruits listening to that, especially if you're a road grading offensive lineman? I think, when it comes to elite recruits, NIL is just such a big piece, that can often outweigh that, or that can, be a deterrent if Michigan's not willing to play the NIL game with that position or for that player in particular. No offense to Bear, but he's, a 3-star interior offensive lineman. So NIL is probably less of a factor there. So it really just depends on, what level of NIL are we talking about? Are we talking about a blue chip recruit? Are we talking about a 3-star? I think NIL's obviously just changed the entire approach. Lou says, hearing how Underwood is dropping dimes in practice, if you're Calvin Russell, wouldn't that make you pique your interest even more? Touchdowns for Russell from Underwood would be like layups on the court for his ball vision. Yeah, like I said, I still think NIL is the ultimate piece, but I think Bryce Underwood has been a fantastic sell for wide receivers. I mean, any guys that have been on campus have raved about Underwood. I mean, I talked to Travis Johnson last night, and he and his mom couldn't stop talking about Bryce Underwood's talent and what the offense could look like under him. So it's certainly a great sell for Michigan. Tyson Smith says, one last one. Do you think we get the Mormon duo of Brock Harris and Ryder Lyons? Brock Harris actually just announced his commitment date for April 7th, probably leaning elsewhere there, even though he just visited Michigan. With Ryder Lyons, I think we'll know a lot more after his visit. He is definitely the number one guy on the board. They're going to make him a top priority, make him feel like a top priority on his visit next weekend, April the 12th. I think Chip Lindsey and Sherrone Moore are off to a pretty good start with Lions, but that one seems like it's going to take a little while. Ryan K says recruiting is the best it's been in 20 years. We got Bryce Underwood, we got Larry Ellison, and unlimited NIL, and the NCAA won't have the guts to do anything. Can life get any better than this? No, Ryan. That's why you should subscribe to the Wolverine.com. Michelle, we have a super chat from customer service who says, we are in Felix Ojo's top 5. Do we have a real chance? Yeah, Michigan definitely has a real chance. The concern with Ojo for me is, are they going to spend more resources on Cantwell, which right now the answer appears to be yes. I don't think, I think Ojo and Cantwell would require somewhat similar packages. I think Cantwell's will be a lot more, especially with Drew Rosenhaus negotiating for him. But I think Ojo will also command that level or close to that level. So I think it might be more realistic if you're talking about an elite combination duo of Michigan to land. It would probably be Cantwell and Turntine. But I honestly, like 100, I would probably put Felix Ojo over Cantwell. Michelle Wallace says, why are they going after a 2028 quarterback out of Michigan when they told the young man that's going on a mission he's their number one quarterback that we want? Yeah, so they did tell Ryder Lyons that he's the number one priority this cycle. But, that one, there's no guarantee Michigan lands him. And two, you want to build the quarterback room. I mean, Michigan doesn't have any depth right now. Jaden Davis is running number 2, and he couldn't even get on the field last year in a terrible quarterback situation. Mikey Keene has an injury. We don't know the extent of it. Michigan was in trouble in the quarterback room last year after J.J. McCarthy. They just took a bunch of projects, and they took a mega athlete and Alex Orji, who, obviously is no longer with the program. They took a big project in Jaden Denigol, who, wasn't able to make any type of impact. They took Kendrick Bell, who's playing wide receiver. You need to be able to land quarterbacks and have them compete. Michelle Wallace says, when does portal start for football? Mid-April. So we're just a couple weeks away. Michelle Wallace says, do you think we're going to lose Jaden Davis to the portal? I mean, right now, again, he's running number 2 with nobody in the quarterback room, so maybe not. Noah says, how are we looking for Ojo? We just talked about that. I think Michigan has a chance, but it'll really depend on where they spend NIL. Wolverine Casual says, hi, EJ. Do you get better with your mother-in-law, or does your wife get along with her mother-in-law? We all have in-law issues, I'm sure. Wolverine Casual says, in your opinion, could you rank the recruiters on staff from top to bottom? I mean, Sherrone Moore is number one. Number two would probably be, excluding. Okay, number two would probably be Lamar Morgan. Number three would, just based on what he did last cycle. Number three would be Tony Alford. Even though he hasn't landed the big fish, he's just like a pro's pro. He has great experience. Number four would probably be, honestly, like Wink Martindale is a sneaky good pick there. He doesn't do a lot on the road, but man, he really impresses guys on visits. Number five would probably be Lou Esposito. I think he's done a really nice job. Number six would be I think like number six would be Bellamy. I guess Bellamy should probably be higher than Esposito. The problem with Bellamy is obviously he's not landing the big time guys at wide receiver. But if Michigan invests a lot in NIL and if the offense is more balanced, then I think Bellamy will definitely rise up there. He has all the tools to be an elite recruiter, and he landed a ton of highly touted guys when he was coaching the secondary. And honestly, Chip Lindsey's probably up there too, higher than Esposito as well, because, he's done a great job with the 27 board as far as quarterbacks, and he's, an experienced guy as well. And then I think the unproven guy, then you have kind of the next tier, which is the unproven guys, Grant Newsome. It's tough to gauge him when Sherrone Moore is so involved. And then Steve Casula, is a guy who doesn't have a lot of experience, and he only ended up with Eli Owens last cycle. And then you have Brian Jean Mary, who I think, the game's probably passing him by. Wolverine Casual says, you've been proven right about Jaden Davis. How do you balance being objective with not upsetting recruits? Have there been cases where you've gotten in trouble with Michigan? Look, man, my job is to be honest and provide you guys with my evaluations from my time out on the road. I saw Jaden Davis over and over and over again over the course of multiple years. And I have to give you my honest opinion. If that upsets, a recruit, if that upsets a recruit's dad, if that upsets Michigan, I don't really care. Wolverine Casual says, how concerned should we be with the lack of commitments? Like I said, Michigan doesn't, start super fast. They're a team that usually succeeds the most during summer OVs and late in the cycle. So tiny bit concerned, but not overly concerned. Mike Abner says, if you could pick one under the radar player that's not on Michigan's board, who would it be and why? I mentioned that one last show. I said Vladen Sohn, 300-pound defensive lineman, originally from Europe. He's playing at a boarding school here in Virginia, close to Hyder. He has a lot of major offers. He will definitely be one. Josh Jackson says he'd like to donate his question to customer service. So there you go, customer service. You do have some fans. Mike Abner says, what made you fall in love with recruiting? At the time I was just 18 years old. I was a college freshman. And honestly, I knew I wanted to do some type of, sports journalism or whatever. So I just sent out, emails to everybody asking if I could work for free. And Rivals ended up letting me work for free. And yeah, at the time I was 18, so it was really cool because I kind of connected with the kids and stuff, back in the day. So I just think it was really relatable. It was cool to always have a consistent change. You jump from class to class, so it's always new kids. Like, of course, I miss covering guys like JJ and Donovan and Junior, but you always get a fresh new class, a fresh, batch of personalities. And I think that's really a really cool aspect. I had never left the state of Texas in my life until I turned like 22. So, the traveling aspect has been really cool. But eventually I'll just get too old to be doing recruiting. Can't keep connecting with kids, Mike Abner says, we have a super chat Customer service says, Tyson, it's your turn to support the travel budget. Look at that. Customer service just taking shots at Tyson Smith. Mike Abner says, what are Michigan's chances with Salisi Mowa? He's wrapping up his visit today. Then he goes straight to Michigan State. So I won't really be able to catch up with him, but I do think Michigan's in the mix. They are getting an official visit in the summer, and curious to see, what the returns are from this visit once we can, talk to him later on. Scoop 517 says, do you think we can close the deal with Carter Meadows? I think so. I think Michigan is in a good spot there. And obviously they've recruited really well at Gonzaga and in the DMV. Michelle Wallace says, I know you don't do basketball, but whatever to Dickerson that transferred. Now, I think Michigan just landed a portal commitment, but I'm not sure. I really don't do basketball. Let's see. Ryan K says, what do you know about this Deuce Gerald's guy that just visited? Sounds like he's leaning Ole Miss, but he looks like an intriguing prospect. Yeah, top 100 defensive lineman out of Georgia. Our secondary recruiting reporter, Ethan McDowell, had a good update on Deuce Gerald's, which you can read at the Wolverine. I think Michigan probably has some work to do there, but they're in the mix. Let's see. Let's go down to oh man, people want a Tyson Smith versus customer service boxing match. So we'll see. Let's go down to oh man, this thing just speeded by. All right, Michelle Wallace says, I'm not a hater. I just thought that it would be nice to give to your travel budget. Yeah, if you want to, Michelle, you can hit the little box with the dollar symbol. But so far, we've only had customer service with his barrage of super chats. Justin said, did we miss out on Cantwell? No, not if they go all in on NIL. Struggle String of BK says, this question is for you personally, EJ. Has NIL made covering recruiting more interesting, more or less difficult? No effect at all. It's made it less fun. I don't know. And that's another thing that just goes with like getting older is you can't connect with kids as much, which is the biggest part of the job that I enjoyed when I was younger. And now it's even harder to do that with NIL. I think it's made it more interesting in terms of the people that I'm talking to. Like every insider piece seems to be me talking to an agent or me talking to, somebody directly involved with NIL. It's just a completely different world at this point. Burke says, EJ, are you an SMU fan since you went there? Good season for them, by the way. I'd support SMU. Like if SMU was on TV, I would, and I watched a couple of games there towards the end, just because it was kind of cool to see them go to the playoff. But I'm not like a super SMU fan, man. I get those donation calls. I send them straight to voicemail. And the other thing is I was never a regular student. Like I got that internship with Rivals covering SMU when I was 18. And then on top of that, I worked for the school paper. So I was always like in the press box. I never got to be a real student fan at all. We have a super chat from Scoot 517-199. We appreciate that, Scoot. Unfortunately, we did not get a question from you, so you can ask your question. Let's see. Michelle Wallace says, the San Francisco 49ers is your favorite NFL team because I've seen you in one on On3. I'm wearing it right now. It's actually my dad's favorite team. And then, I guess I adopted them as a child. Let's go down to, Bobby Chuck says, what's up with the $2 stuff? And that's a super chat, Bobby. You can skip the line and donate to my travel budget. Customer service, $5. He says, this was a great show. We always appreciate you. Customer service. And Jordan Botka says, EJ is a heck of a lad. What about that British slang there? Maybe Jordan is watching from the UK, which I'm a big UK fan. I love all UK stuff. Scoop 517 says, do you think we will go in for Dakota Warrant? Yeah, man. I think as long as Michigan puts together a competitive package, all signs point to the Wolverines early on. I know he really likes Ohio State. Obviously, that's a very pass-happy offense. But if Michigan shows more balance. I mean, it just makes a lot of sense. I mean, he grew up with Bryce Underwood in the Sound Mind, Sound Body program. He plays for Rod Oden at Harper Woods, who's a former Wolverine. He's a cousin of Jacob Oden, who's currently on the roster. So, yeah. Mike Ford says, heard that Trey is portaling out due to the crazy guard class we have coming in. I think that's basketball, which obviously I do not handle, but our team guys do at the Wolverine. And you can subscribe today. There's a lot going on with basketball transfer portal, obviously a lot going on with football recruiting, a lot going on with spring football. Now is a great time to subscribe to the Wolverine.com. Use that promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at the Wolverine.com. And also make sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It looks like we had a couple of questions come in late. Keegan Imhoff says, would Crippen be a tackle or a guard? If you're talking about Greg Crippen, I mean, obviously he's playing center. Struggle Streaming BK says, when you do hang up your recruiting cleats, EJ, you're going to be missed. Won't be too long. All right, guys. But I will be here next week. So make sure to join me next Tuesday, and we appreciate it. And yeah, see you next week.